In this video, I want to talk about the magazine article, Program for Love, written by Jeffrey Young. Um, this is a Psychology Today article, but it also showed up in the Chronicle of Higher Review. So it depends on what source you get, you know, in terms of how you end up citing it in an essay if you need to cite it. But this is a magazine article. Now, as such, it's not necessarily the journal in the academic journal style. I believe it is still a very well-written article, very insightful, with a lot of academic tendencies, if you will. But it's not your official academic journal article. And I want you to look at the style again. You see how the style shifts. There's much more of a conversational style here, and that does not weaken this essay one bit. If you could write something like this, I'd give you an A in the course. Let's imitate this. Imitate this style. Imitate the style of Marge Simpson. Go for it, okay? Now, I want you to look at the way that a review of literature is kind of given here, right? Jeffrey Young will ask the people he's interviewing what books they're writing, right? And you'll get this sort of a summary, if you will, of some of their works, so that you can kind of situate, right? So that you can situate, Sherry Turkle's views and Levi's views, or Levi's views, Levy, depending on what part of the United States you're coming at, you're going to pronounce it a different way, or what ethnic group, but David Levy, right? And you're going to get kind of information about the broader picture, right, of what's happening with robotics and humanoid, machines, social machines, if you want to call it. Part of another thing that this essay does that you can profit from is just look at how they start trying to define what we're talking about. We're not talking about the robotic arm in a factory that can put on a door handle on the car as it moves down the line, but we're talking about any sort of mechanical thing that takes on the semblance of a human or an animal, right? Now, that's a large scale thing happening there, right? But just a machine that has the right proportions, or not even the proportions, but if it has a face with eyes, and something that looks like hands, we might be able to somehow ascribe to it a type of personality, or we might be more open and willing to become more emotionally connected to it than we would to, like, this mouse. I have no emotional connection to this mouse. I just, but this is a machine, right? I have a scanner right here. No emotional connection to the scanner at all, but if you give me some plush toys that have meant something to my family or my kids or myself. I grew up, why am I telling you this? But here we go. 5 or 6 years old, I had a Pink Panther that my mom sewed by hand. And I love that thing. And I'm trying to remember what happened to it. The other day I was trying to remember about this Pink Panther. So, we can connect with a lot of things that look like animals or humans. All right. So what might the future have in terms of where we are headed for this? What are people doing with this now? What are they doing with it in education? Where do the dangers lie? Notice how as Jeffrey Young presents this information, he's giving you a larger picture of the topic, right? Now, it doesn't sound like some of the academic journals we've read. He doesn't just sit down for a while and just give you a review of lit at the beginning, but he works it in, right? And so you can see that eventually there is a specific focus here. This paper is not just about robotics, right? Again, I will have students that want to write about technology, it's way too broad to ever be good. Like you might be technically adept in like getting the sentences written and the punctuation, but essentially those papers are boring. Those papers are never going to do anything more that AI will do. Okay, so I don't necessarily want you using AI in your writing, but this is our future. You got to get better at AI and coming up with material. And we don't even talk about writing, just speaking, just thinking. You've got to get style going. You got to figure out how to be something that AI cannot imitate. All right. When it just comes to giving me answers, I can ask AI for that. I don't need you to give me the lowdown on technology. You see what I'm saying? So when you try to do it, I'm like, okay, this is an assignment that's just going to stay in this classroom because it's not going to go anywhere. Wikipedia, just Wikipedia is going to beat you to it. I'll have students trying to write on the Titanic. I haven't had that in a while actually, but there was like 10 years where every semester someone wanted to write on the Titanic. I think I'm exaggerating, but it felt that way. Finally, I kid you not, I was walking down the hallway somewhere and someone was throwing away a book. Big old, sort of coffee table book, high gloss, heavy paper, tons of color. And I picked it up. And lo and behold, it was on the Titanic. Every page was in color. Big book. This thing must have cost $50 in 2007 or something. So today it would be, I would say, $80. They were throwing it out, right? Because all the information that was in there was already on the net in a much broader way. You can go and actually get videos of the sub and just, okay. I don't exactly know why they were throwing it out. But anyway, the point is, I'm looking at this book on the Titanic, and then I have a student wanting to write on the Titanic. They're never going to beat the book. The book's got it covered in terms of what they can produce, right? We can just go to Wikipedia, and many papers that I'll read this semester, Wikipedia does a better job. Automatically, it's going to do a better job. So this could be disheartening, couldn't it? It could be disheartening. It's like, well, how do I write? Well, yes, that's exactly what you got to figure out. That's exactly what you got to figure out. Is how do you write something that actually is you? Okay, so you can use. No, I'm not giving you permission, but what I'm saying is obviously it's easy enough to get AI to write your reports, but that does nothing to help you grow your creativity. And you can be doing this for years and not even know what you're missing in terms of your potential to become someone that can hold someone else's attention, that can actually have interesting things to say, that can do what I call dimensional thinking, which is able to see something head on, but then slide over to the side and see it from the side, to slide all the way around to see it from behind, to see it from the top down, from the bottom up, to see it from other people's eyes. You got all these dimensions that are happening. You can be able to slide around and see this topic from different. You're able to recognize the lacunae in the conversation, in other words, the gaps. You're able to realize when this topic is going to flop on you and not going to be anything that's going to be worth pursuing. And by the way, this applies to something like a business idea, right? Because the creativity that produces an actually unique text is the very same thing that you're going to need to use to produce and to create a unique business if you want to do that, or a unique song if you want to be a song artist. It applies to a lot of things. So you're actually, I don't know, you got to be a little more creative, okay? And when Jeffrey Young is writing for an article for a magazine, he has to be able to have something that people are going to want to read. That as they look through the magazine and they see his title, they might actually stop on it because it has some sort of program for love. What are you talking about? Right? The title itself, program for love. What does that mean? Right? It doesn't feel like I'm programmed for love. Now, if someone is saying, well, humans love and they need love, well, okay, I think a lot of us are going to kind of buy into that. But if I'm programmed to do something, then it doesn't really seem like I'm having a choice on it. And sometimes, love needs to be grounded on choice, or you can. In other words, this is a topic that this is a title that might make some people go like, What are you talking about? And then they read what they read at the opening, and they read about Turkle having some sort of moment with, you know, that that cog, the robot that she was using in her class. um you know it draws you in, right? And then so it creates interest, starts trying to maintain it, and at the end it rewards it in a bit if you make it all the way through. um okay, so what I want you to see here is, I want you to see the style that's used. I want you to see the create interest, maintain interest, reward interest that's at play here. That is, I think, the number one job of a writer or text creator. um I also want you to see the review of lit that's there. Again, it's not necessarily an official review of lit. It doesn't look like that, but there is conversation of other ideas, other research work, and it's and the notion is presented in a broad way, and then wham, it gets very specific, and the question of transgression arises. This is the heartbeat of the essay, right? Should we or should we not have social machines in relationship spaces? That's it right there. You see how specific that is? Should we have a robot babysit our kids? Should we have a robot teach class? Should we have a robot that we can date? Now, let's just use it as a thought experiment and kind of push it out there to the future, right? And let's just assume people can afford it and all that. Would we actually date, a humanoid that looks so real that it can fool us as to whether or not it's a real person, or at least we can choose to believe that it's real, and the choice is easy because the thing looks so real. Now, if you're wondering about this, I know that this is not mainstream right now. It's got a ways to go in terms of affordability, in terms of the energy needed to power this as a a truly cultural phenomenon. But if you want to just Google humanoid and see where we are right now with the technology and how these things are looking, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty incredible. Okay, but we don't need that to be connected or to feel ourselves embracing the machine, the programmed thing, right, towards us, because you can also research how people are falling in love with artificial intelligence boyfriend and girlfriend. Right? There's services out there that allow you to have an artificial intelligence partner. Okay, so it's already there. So people are apparently connecting with this. And that's really the heartbeat of this essay, right? Is should we let machines take the place of humans? And of course, the question then is going to be, well, wouldn't it be great if instead of having a janitor, we could just have a machine clean? Let's not consider the fact that the janitor loses a job, but what about fixing cars? What if a machine could just do that? Aren't there plenty of things in this world that machines can do that is not a moral issue? Like, do we really need someone, like in Willy Wonka, the movie, putting a toothpaste cap on top of the toothpaste tube? Do we need someone weaving our sweaters? Can't the loom do it? Do we really need cabbies driving horses? Can't the car do that? So this is actually a very old question, but right now it's really accelerating. I just read the other day that Amazon is laying off 14,000 jobs. Now the number could go as high as 30,000 on the corporate level. We're talking about managers. And this is worldwide though, but still 30,000. That's just one company. 30,000 jobs are going. And because it's middle level it's corporate, the salaries lost are going to be big. I mean, how do these people just go out? Are they going to be able to go out and get a job at Microsoft doing the same thing? If Amazon's getting ready to lay off because of AI, wouldn't Microsoft eventually be doing the same thing, and Apple? Where are these people going to go? So there's this sense that AI is here, okay, and if it's here in a lot of places. This article is just trying to look at the places where traditionally we want humans to be in there. When you're training a child, when you're teaching a child, when you're teaching young adults, Does a teacher have to have a relational aspect? Do you have to feel like you're talking to another person? Well, what about counseling? What about the religious arts, the ministries out there? What about doctors? Do people? What about the hospice industry? Do you really want machines when you're afraid, when you're scared, when you're angry, when you're confused? Do you want a machine talking to you? No, that is not a simple answer, right? But I do suspect that when I believe someone else has suffered and lost, I can connect with them because it's not about humor. In other words, when I look at a machine, I think a machine can be funny. I think a machine can be very efficient. I'm talking about computers as a machine as well. Anything that's running on electricity and producing output from input. I think they can be funny. I think they can be efficient, right? But the one thing I'm not sure a machine can do is be sad or be worried or be um, uh, afraid of death, be pain, to feel pain. Can a machine actually feel pain? So ironically, it's the feelings that are now being part of the core human experience. And I feel like if you can figure out a job path that accentuates that communication with that allows people to know that you know what pain is, you know what loss is, you know what love is, you know what joy is, you know what these emotions. It's no longer your ability to give out the right answer. AI is going to beat you to that every time in terms of the technical side of things, math, science, history. It's your ability to recognize the human experience now. What does it mean to be human? All right. So that's very important. And for nothing else, if nothing else, I want you to read something like this so that you can think about that. All right. Now, Turkle says there is a space in our culture that is reserved for humans. And to let robots go in there is not just a bad idea, it's morally wrong. The word she uses is transgressive. Okay, traditionally, transgression is sin. Now, she's not going to use that word. This is not going to use a word that's so heavily laden with religious connotation, but she is going to say transgressive. So morally, it's wrong to substitute relationship duties, if you will. If you have your aging father or mother living in a home and you're in another state, how do you care for them? Are you really just going to let a furry machine that purrs when you stroke it calm them down? Okay, now it gets complicated, doesn't it? Because, well, what about medicine? Isn't medicine also chemicals? It's not a person, yet that can calm someone down. That can make them feel better. So, Jeffrey Young is not here trying to give you the answer. He's trying to create interest, maintain it, and reward it, right? By picking a topic, by focusing down on it, by showing you how this is something interesting in the bigger picture of how people are writing and thinking about the topic. And then he's bringing in competing voices. And, he's providing summaries of the ideas and the work so you understand what these people are saying, right? And that's about it. Okay, but if you want to think about the amount of research, if you will, that went into this in terms of Young being able to express this correctly. I mean, the groundwork he had to do, the footwork in order to interview these people, that is a type of research. I'm not asking you to do that, but this, as I said before, this has a lot of academic habits are at play in this paper, right? This essay. Now, the style is much more colloquial. I mean, it's conversational. And I'm fine with that too. If you end up writing something that creates interest, maintains it, and rewards it, and is essentially good, logical, or cohesive, just makes sense. You don't have to convince me, right? But it just kind of makes sense, from the presuppositions you have, the values you have, the definitions you provide. I can see how your point of view makes sense. Okay, so that's fine. Now the thing is, you do need to be able to imitate as these writings as you write for me, and I would like to see a specific topic not just robotics, right? But should robots do what humans do in relationships? Should they be your girlfriend? Should they be your parent? Should they be your babysitter? Should they be your teacher? Should they be your priest or your pastor? Should robots do what humans do in these jobs? Are there jobs that are reserved for humans? You get Turkle saying, yes, there are jobs that are reserved for humans. It's wrong to let robots in there. You get David Levy saying, not really. People have the right to connect with what they want to connect with. And if a robotic priest is something that works for them, or an AI counselor is really what helps them as they log on and have an artificial intelligence therapy session, David Levy saying, who am I and who are you to say that's wrong? So nothing, I want you to see that nothing was really resolved here, but yet, this is a very rewarding read in terms of like helping you see some issues and some questions. Now, when you write, your capstone, okay, you need to be able to have a section of application at the end, right? You need to present the review of lit, present your view, explain it, support it, and then once you got us there, you show us how your belief is sensible. Show me how it can be applied in real life. So what are some applications here in real life, right? I talked about the applications of the study done about chance and confidence, and then the applications of Marge Simpson and how a message was presented in with a traditional core, but an anti-traditional or a prototypical, a new type of surface level presentation, the cartoon, the blue hair, that sort of thing. Here, I think the application would be, if you end up taking one of these two sides, well, like if you were to agree with Turkle. Now this is not your paper. Your paper is your paper, but I'm just saying that one way an application could be seen here is if you really believe that there are jobs that are off limits to humans, what are we doing right now to find these jobs, to define these jobs, to keep these jobs off limits? What are we doing? Are we working for a bill in Congress about keeping robots and AI out of these jobs? What is these types of jobs called? Relational jobs? Personnel jobs? I don't know. Do we even have a name? So if you want to really move forward in application, maybe you realize we just need to name this. Let me start naming it. My job here at this paper is just to give this a name. And if you realize that's the goal of your paper, it's modest, it's doable, you might then flip back and make sure it appears in your title. That you're all about putting a name, defining and putting a name to this type of job. Okay, teachers, babysitters, doctors. See, I do believe AI can do a lot of things in medicine, but I think at one point people that are sick want to hold somebody's hand. They want to talk to somebody and feel like they were heard. If you look at major complaints against the medical professionals, doctors, and their bedside manner, you will find a major complaint, a major concern is that doctors do not know how to communicate with empathy to their patients. They tend to look at the patient as a body that needs to be fixed. And the patient is saying, I'm scared, I need you to help me as a person through my body, but don't forget that it's really me, it's not my body that's in this bed. So, you might say we need to, let's move forward with this. And let's really work on some ways we can bring this into practical use. Let's maybe the first step is to just define what sort of jobs these are, and then maybe we can start some sort of movement that petitions Congress to make sure that maybe we need to put laws around this. I don't know, but there's got to be some movement towards application in your work. What if you were to take the other view and say, well, look, we actually self-medicate with chemicals to make us feel better. When we're lonely, we watch movies, we turn on the TV. Those are machines. Why not? We're not saying that that's the cure, but if we can't have a real life relationship, why can't I have a relationship with my an AI text bot or whatever? It at least gives me something to do. You might take that view and say, hey, you have the right to baby steps, if you will. You have the right to the middle solution, where it's like, look, I want to cure this, right? I want a cure for my illness. The illness could be loneliness. It could be, all sorts of things. Uh, Lack of a support group, lack of, I don't know. And you want a human being to meet that need, right? But that's like the cure. But if that person is not there helping, or the group of people is not there helping you, aren't you allowed a middle solution? Like, well, how about, it's just like a disease. I want the cure of the disease. Let's say you have constant headaches. You're like, man, I want this to go away, but if I can't get it to go away, at least give me the ibuprofen or something. It'll just take care of the symptoms, but at least that's something, right? So don't we have the right to do symptoms management? That's what I'm saying. It's like, I don't know how to fix this for real, but if I can just fix how it feels, or if I can just get through the day somehow. I don't know how to fix my life, but if I can fix the day, just get through the day, so maybe that's why you're going to need to, whatever, you know what I'm saying? My illustration's falling down here, but then you might say, well, how do we apply this in real life? Maybe we need more classes on this, and you can look maybe at your college offerings, and if there's no classes that talk about managing artificial intelligence in personal relationships, maybe we can start there. I don't know. I mean, it kind of seems like a half-baked solution, but it'll work for a paper. Stick that thing in there and give me some sort of application. So be sure that you keep that in mind. All right. So I've had you read 3 pieces to prepare for the capstone. Your capstone is coming, but these 3 pieces will help you to see how people have done it before. What do they do with a review of lit? How do they use it to make sure that the reader understands that they've got a certain point to make that really kind of no one else has made in that way? Here's my point. And then how do they explain that point? And then once they get there, how do they kind of make the point relevant? How do they make the point relevant? In other words, it's the so what question. It's like, well, that's great, but so what? Well, so what? Let me show you how it shows up in real life. There's your application. Okay. So that's what I want you to do with your capstone. Now, also, aside from Marge Simpson, you have some pretty short pieces here. Program for Love is not that long. Now, the heads I win, tails is chance. There was a lot of grunt work that went into it, but the actual text itself isn't that long either. So, hey, I'm not asking for long papers. I'm just asking for papers that can model this and can show that movement, And these are some things that make up academic writing. But underneath it is the one core job of a writer. Remember this: create interest, maintain it, reward it. Notice I did not say persuade. Your duty, your burden is not to persuade me of anything. Your job is to give me a text that creates interest, maintains it, rewards it. And when I put it down, I feel like that was not a waste of time. I liked reading that. I appreciated this. I got some new insights. I've got a definition I can work with here. I've got this information I found. I don't know. There's got to be some sort of reward. Really quickly, the reward is a noetic reward. It's a mental reward. It's the reward of not being bored. Okay, so if ever you find an artist whose songs you love, if you have a couple things you're watching, some sort of series you're watching on whatever platform you're using, say Netflix or Hulu or Peacock, or whatever the Netflix, the streaming platforms are. If you've got some stuff to watch that you like watching, okay, you got to ask yourself, why do I like it? That whatever it is, you don't even have to come up with the answer. You just recognize you connect. You recognize that you like that. That's the reward I'm talking about. Okay. Now I don't have to read your paper and say, wow, I like this. I just have to realize that this was interesting. This was create, maintain, reward. It did that. And part of the reward is this is a relevant issue. This is something that I'm working through in my life somehow in some way. So many topics are like that. If you think about it, many topics you're kind of working through. Take mental health. I mean, I think all of us kind of have issues every now and then with that, and we need at least to be preventative and to make sure that we understand what other people are going through or what we're going through. Yes, that's relevant. What about, you know, you know, basically anything political is relevant. We're whether I'm active or not in some of these issues, it's going to eventually affect us because of the way the country does these things. Media, technology, these things are relevant to our lives. But you just have to make sure that you find the right notes to play, the right path to take that doesn't present your work as just too shallow or too repetitive or too redundant. There's stuff online that's going to beat you every time when it comes to just giving the information. So, if that's all you're doing, I honor your work as a student, but I'm like, how is this really giving me a voice? Where's the you here? This is something that was just called off online from information and put together. There's no you. Why are you erasing yourself like this? That's what I'm thinking. Right? Well, because you don't want to type, because you don't want to put 2 hours in to write the thing. If that's a pattern of life, you're going to disappear in a year or two in terms of any genuine idea or creativity, right? And people notice that when they're in your presence and you are sparkling with intelligence, they notice that, okay? And when you couple that with respect and some love in there, that's very powerful. And you got to be able to think like that, especially as we move into a very hyper-intelligent world. It's no longer about the information. So, I don't want you to take the shortcut and to not try to think in terms of how is what I'm writing actually interesting? How does this work? Now, again, I'm challenging you here, and I want you to understand that if you turn in basically anything that meets the assignment's requirements in terms of the stuff that's spelled out, word count, number of sources, you're going to get a good grade. But because I'm just that way, somebody paid a lot of money for this class, and I'm not going to have you repeat it if you're doing the work. But I'm telling you, you got to be better than looking at your grades and think that's a reflection of your intellectual growth. Okay, that I do believe higher education has lost a good part of its mission and its way in that. And you need to make sure that you are being control of this and becoming more of an independent thinker in terms of why it is that you're doing what you do and how can you do it in a way that preserves your individuality, right? And it can't be just about information. It's got to be about your development as a person. See what I'm saying? And that has to show up in your writing. And if you can figure that out, that's the holy grail. If you can figure that out, then I would say you got a career as a writer ahead of you. Don't give up your day job, but do it on the side because you're going to earn some money off that, okay? Hey, thank you for watching and for being patient through my ramblings.